Cool. Howdy everybody, it's Devin here again with Make Anything, and I'm excited today because we're doing another 3D printing pen review. And today we're looking at the Scribbler. So the folks over at the Scribbler team sent me one of these pens, and they also sent me a bunch of filament, some glow-in-the-dark filament as well. And you know I'm gonna do something cool with that. So let's go ahead and open this thing up and see what it can do. Magnetic storage box, nice touch. So here we've got the pen, and I guess they took me as a fan of lavender. Yeah, it's an odd looking thing, but fits in the hand relatively comfortably. You know, this curve like sits right in the back of my hand there, so yeah, feels alright. It looks like we've also got some sample spools here, and I guess this is the power adapter. That's right. So just the three things, it's very simple. Unlike the 3Doodler, there's no extra tools, so hopefully that means I won't need any extra tools and not just that they aren't there. Oh, I should mention, this is the latest version of the Scribbler 3D printing pen. So as of filming this, I don't think this one is even for sale, but I'm sure it'll be out very soon. So I'm gonna plug this in right in the back, and yep, sure enough I get a little welcome screen. And it already has my plastic set to PLA, and it has a target temperature. So what's cool about this pen is you can actually adjust the temperature, so you can make sure it's just cool enough that the plastic comes out, but it'll also harden a lot quicker than, you know, hotter plastic, of course. So this is to feed the plastic through, and then there's also a button to retract it, so when you're changing filaments or just when you're done using the pen. And then there's also these two buttons on this side to speed up or slow down the feeding. So that's a really nice little feature that lets you really have a lot of control over the speed that you're printing. So some people might prefer to not have to deal with that, but I kind of like that extra control. So everything's set up, so I'm gonna go ahead and press this button once, and I can see that it starts heating up really quickly. And look at that. Let's get some filament going here. So the other pen I tested just used sticks, and this uses a spool, which if it works I actually think will be nicer because you can have one long spool and you don't have to add more filament quite as often. Also on this pen, you don't just press once to start feeding, you have to continue holding it. So that's something worth noticing. And there it is. Alright, let's see what I can do. Let's try a little test doodle. Seems to be working alright, and even just on this cardboard, the PLA is sticking really well. So actually both pens that I tested do have PLA filaments, but with the other one I was using ABS, and this one I'm using PLA, which, as I suspected, seems to stick to paper and probably most things a little better just because it doesn't shrink as much as it's cooling. So I'm gonna trace this photo of a little place called The Wave in Arizona. Really cool rock formation. It's got a lot of swoopy figures, and I thought it would be cool if I traced it out. So all I did was print out the image I want to trace on a regular piece of printer paper, and then I have just this plastic sleeve that I use to hold photo paper, and I'm gonna put this inside. So now I can draw on the plastic, and well, I don't know what's gonna happen, but hopefully it sticks just well enough for me to trace this out. Let's do it. It's not quite sticking, so I'm gonna try my little hairspray trick again. Just give it a squirt. Couldn't get the unscented version, so it smells really nice in here. Let's try this again. I think it's safe to say if you're good at drawing in general, you'll be good at this. If you're a terrible artist, it's not going to help you a lot. Pretty sweet. Maybe we should make a little stand for it. Alright, so I'm gonna freehand a little template just so I have some idea of what I'm doing. And I'll draw these little feet for my sketch, kind of trying to mimic the style of the sketch itself. Then I'll use some sticky putty to hold this down, and I'll just draw a line to fuse the parts together. Hold them there for a second or two and they'll keep their place. The feet alone weren't enough to hold it up, so I built these little extra supports, and then we had a freestanding sketch. Pretty cool if you ask me. So now I'm gonna swap out filaments. Clip off the end. Alright, so I got my color switched out, and for my next project, just like with my last review, I want to do something that involves both the 3D printing pen and my 3D printer. So this time I made a bunch of vases on my printer, but I cut slices out of them so that I could recomplete them with the 3D printing pen, and that'll kind of combine this perfection of the 3D printer with the imperfection of the 3D printing pen and that kind of organic feel. Now it's really hard to like draw a curve in thin air. You can't really do that. So I'm thinking of maybe doing it, just letting it sag down while I draw it and drawing it vertically, or I can draw individual curves flat on a piece of paper and then kind of stick them on afterwards. I don't know, let's experiment. That's the fun part. So to complete the top rim of my vase, I'll just trace the existing part, and then I'll mark the ends so I know how long to make the arc. I draw it on a piece of cardboard and then stick it onto my vase using little beads of plastic. I found it's helpful to keep a pair of scissors with you and to just constantly clean up your sketch, that way the strings don't get out of control. Next, I traced the rim of my vase, and then I started creating some arcs in midair. This is probably harder than it looks, because you have to estimate how long of a string of plastic you need to create that correctly sized arc. But I managed to do it, and I think it looks super cool. I repeated those steps for another vase, so I could try a slightly different design. Alright, at this point I decided to break open this bright bundle of extra filament, and they come in spools like this. So when you open it up, it looks like this. Now, I don't know if you're supposed to cut this into chunks so that you don't have to have this thing hanging out of your pen the whole time, but I'm just gonna try keeping it as it is. We'll set this up to the high speed. Feed this through. Makes a nice beat for you. Alright, there we go. Let's do another vase. These vases are fun. You don't have to watch this.
So here's another completed vase, and I just went a little more scribbly with that one. And I also made this great big yellow vase that uses a more of a regular triangle pattern. After that, it was time to try out my glow-in-the-dark filaments. And to do that, I printed out this, lump. Well, it's supposed to be a rock, and I printed it out using Filament 1's Timber Fill. As it turns out, the champagne-colored filament works really well for making rocks. So on this little rock, I'm gonna make a colorful coral reef with some glow-in-the-dark details. I started out with some white filament, and I just kept switching out colors and making different kinds of little corals and animals and whatnot, until the rock was just covered with tons of different little life forms. Here I'm using that green glow-in-the-dark filament, so as you can see, it's pretty much just clear under normal light, but when it glows, it should be green. And I just go on and keep adding colors until I have this final result, which looks really cool, especially under a black light.
Alright, so gotta wrap this up as the sun goes down. What can I say? The Scribbler is another quality 3D printing pen. I made this super cool freestanding sketch, which I'm definitely gonna play around with some more. These vases are also super cool. This is an idea I came up with before I actually had any 3D printing pens in my hand, and it turned out exactly how I imagined, so that is fantastic. And then of course we've also got this little reef, which is an awesome little ecosystem that there's no way you can make this on a 3D printer. So I gotta say, 3D printers and 3D printing pens are kind of two beasts of their own. They're very similar in the mechanics and how they work, but as far as what you can actually make with them, there's some big differences. Alright, so to wrap this up, some of my favorite things about this specific pen are the fact that A, it uses spools, and that's super nice because you can just have one big spool feeding into your pen and you can draw something huge without ever having to refill it or do anything crazy. And it's also really easy to swap out filaments, so that's nice. The temperature and speed control is really powerful, so you have 6 different speeds which can come in handy. And you can also set the temperature to a whole range, so you're able to print at the bare minimum temperature for the plastic to melt, and then you'll have the plastic solidifying really quickly, or you could set the temperature really high and use it to weld things together, like I did with this puzzle ball. Also, it's a little touch, but I really like how quickly the pen heats up. You can just plug this pen in, and within maybe 30 seconds, you're ready to start drawing. I don't have much negative to say about this pen, except maybe it looks kind of weird. Also, I think I prefer the function on the 3-doodler where you press feed once and then you press it once more to stop, versus this pen where you have to hold it down continuously. It's not that big of a deal, but when you're doing really large, continuous lines, your thumb can get kind of tired. Also, it didn't happen to me today, but if the filament goes too far into the back of the pen, you might not be able to get it out with the retraction feature, and I guess you would just have to unscrew it and open it up and get the filament out that way. Alright, I hope you guys liked the projects I came up with today. It was a real pleasure working with the Scribbler, and I'm looking forward to testing out some more 3D printing pens in the upcoming weeks. So make sure to subscribe, and make sure you also check out my review for the 3-doodler, which is another pen. Until next time, I'm Devin, this is Make Anything. Stay inspired.